section.
Okay. All right. Good evening and welcome. We are convened as the Provo City School District Board of Education. It is Tuesday, August 10th, 2021, and it is approximately 7 p.m. And we are meeting at the Provo City School District PDC room. We will begin with let's see, do we have a motion to convene?
I move we convene our business meeting.
Motion made by Board Member Partridge, and we'll begin with a roll call, and we'll start with Board Member Bryson.
I'm Board Member Nate Bryson.
Terry McCabe, Board Member.
Keith Rattel, Superintendent.
Melanie Hall, Board President.
Rebecca Nielsen, Board Vice President.
Jennifer Partridge, Board Member.
Gina Hales, Board Member.
Derek Anderson, Business Administrator.
All right, thank you. We will now have opening remarks by Board Member Terry McCabe.
It is my honor to introduce Coach Bobby Cowell. He worked for the school district for many, many years and influenced the lives of countless people. And he's going to give us a prayer. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you so much. All right, next we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance, and Jason Cox will lead us with that.
Good evening. If we'll please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have come to the portion for public input. If you would like to address the board, over here on my right, your left, is a piece of paper we would ask you to fill out and then hand it to Bonnie over here on my left, your right. So if there's anyone that would like to address the board, if they would fill that out, and then we can call upon you to address us. right, Jared Curtis, if you'd like to come to the podium.
That was a surprise. I got called on. Hi, I'm Jared Curtis, live in the Panogas Elementary Zone area. Just wanted to make a comment that I really like the plan going forward with no mask mandate and full school and much of a more return to normal. And my comment is kind of, I'm really happy with that, but I assume I'm being lied to, not because I think you're liars, but I think we're getting lied to a lot by a lot of people. I assume that you can assume I'm lying to you. I think we're at a point where it's safe to assume we're getting lied to, so by multiple people. So I hope that we stay with this plan and I'm proved wrong that I'm not being lied to. So please follow the plan and don't fall for lies. So that's it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public input portion. Next, we're going to approve the Timpview parking plan. I'm going to first ask Mark Wheeler, Director of Facilities, to come up and just address a little bit about this.
Thank you. So as we discussed in the study session, we've been looking at different options to help with some additional parking during the construction phase at Timpview High School. It would be a 3-year window that we would use this additional parking. One option we reviewed would be to use some of the portion of green space at the Edgemont Elementary campus. The price tag would be about a $980,000 price tag to create that parking lot. There were, as I mentioned in the study session, there are several negatives with that. One being the traffic, mixing traffic between high school students and the parents and the kids at the elementary at Edgemont campus. The second option would be some open space, which has been construction staging space so far, just south of the South Gym on the Timpview campus. It would allow us around 250-ish parking spots. It would help not only to get some additional vehicles off the public streets during construction, but also for events, for parking at the track and field. The price tag on that is about $650,000, which again is not part of our construction budget currently. Our original plan that we've been sharing for the last several months is this: if you can please, 1, be patient, 2, carpool, walk, bike, whatever you can do, along with an agreement we set up to use an LDS Chapel parking lot just southwest of the tennis courts, which helps with about 190 parking spots Monday through Friday with some time limitations. So those were the main options: $980,000 at Edgemont, $650,000 on the existing campus during construction, and then our original plan of biking and walking and using some off-site parking.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the Timpview parking plan?
I had a question. I didn't get to ask it earlier. Was the athletic director and the softball coach consulted about this?
No, we have not spoken with anybody with the athletic department.
Okay.
Only administration and then coordinating with the business administrator, Derek, and superintendent, and you as a board. Thank you for bringing that up, Terry, because that's a critical point. I forgot to mention the study session. By using this space on the campus, it will bump the completion of the softball field and some work we're doing with public restrooms and the west side bleachers another year by doing this parking lot. So the earliest that softball field could be in place and ready to use would be spring of 25 instead of spring of 24, like the original plan.
Are we going to make our motions or a discussion first?
I think we should make a motion,
Okay.
and then we can have a discussion on the motion. So is there a motion for the Timpview parking plan?
I'll move that we approve the Timpview parking plan.
Which one?
The first one on the south side of campus.
And then do I second it? And then
Yeah.
And I'll second it.
Okay, now is there any further discussion on the motion?
Okay, so this is my area, and I've already had lots of complaints about parking. Just, it hasn't even started, but I've had complaints because there's no parking. And it's only going to get worse. The neighborhoods are going to get worse. But every time I talk to someone, I said, well, we can probably put in $250 for $800,000. And they're like, what? That's crazy. Or it's not quite 800. I mean, it's 650. But that's like this, and it's only going to last 2 years. This isn't something we're going to move. We can't use it when we have a real parking lot. No, it's just going to be blacktop. We're just going to put it there so that we can pave it. It meets all the regulations we need. And then they're all, well, that's not worth it. And most of the neighbors probably aren't going to be that accommodating. And the further we go, it's just going to get worse and worse. It goes worse throughout the year as kids get driver's licenses, and we don't really even have any kids on campus. I know this is good for the administrators. I also think, just from my own personal perspective, I've lived in Tokyo and kind of lived in New York, and and I had cars in both places, and you just kind of find places and you walk, and it's hard if you're planning on being on time for class, so you have to budget some extra time when you have a car in those places. And we're not going to be that bad, but we're probably talking 3 blocks away next spring. So the question is making kids, and I'm assuming we have enough spots with the use of Edgemont for all of our teachers. I'm assuming that the teachers are okay. So this is about student walking, and is forcing them to walk from 3 blocks away during the winter, is that saving that effort for half of them? It would probably reduce it down to a block if we had the extra parking place, because then we'd have 500 spots. There's 800 kids at its peak, so it's 150 kids. I don't know, we could do the math, but it means kids will be walking a block, the ones that can't get a spot. Are kids not walking that far, or forcing them to go with their brother, or all that? Is that worth 800? And I just think it's a question. Or 650, sorry, I keep throwing 800. 650, that's something we gotta, it's worth a discussion, at least. I think it's a 2-year asset. And it will save a headache. I've heard from Fidel, he said that everyone he's talked to from, I forget, was it Alta or one of the schools, Brighton, that they didn't have any parking, and it was a nonstop headache for the teachers, the administrators, just the hugest nightmare ever. So is $650,000 worth saving some of that nightmare? And I'd like to talk.
Rebecca?
Okay, I'm glad you started out as devil's advocate, because I was afraid I was going to have to play devil's advocate and say exactly what you just said. That's a lot of money for something that's very, very temporary. And if it were a long-term solution in a heartbeat, I would say yes. But I feel so hesitant because there's so many capital needs in our district. And I guess I have a soft spot for the softball kids who would have to wait yet another year. So for their field to be relocated to on campus. So I'm a little bit torn personally as well. I know Mark said in the study session that it wouldn't necessarily put other projects behind because they're technically kind of behind because of COVID anyways. So it doesn't mess up our schedule, but regardless, it's still $650,000 that we basically will dig up and throw away when we're done. That's hard for me to justify. So I don't know if I have an opinion at this point, other than I'm a little bit torn, and I kind of feel the same way as you do, Nate, that it's a ton of money for something so temporary. Also, this is something I thought about, and I don't know if this is an option, but right now we are leaving the marketing of the walking and the please be patient with us type stuff to the school. I wonder if we take a small amount out of a budget somewhere, and when I say small, I mean relatively small, and do a real marketing campaign that really actually reaches people, and not have to leave that on Fidel's plate for him to have to manage, and maybe take some of that headache away from him, and maybe take some of this money and put it into something that's better communication with the community, and I don't know, it's just a random thought, but it's so much money.
And like, could we spend $70,000 on a bus and $100,000 on an employee who just drives back and forth on Timpview Drive, all day, or
And like a little
or-
shuttle system or something could even.
yeah, or just park in the dirt. I know we couldn't do that all year, but like, is dirt just out because of regulations, or I don't know.
Yeah, it would make it difficult. If we get rain at some point, again, it'll make it a muddy mess when you've got a lot of students there. And then, of course, when you start to transition to winter.
And then close it like
Yeah.
when it's rainy or muddy or.
Yeah.
And I don't wish like ill on the neighborhood. I know it's going to be a massive headache, but I do know it's temporary. So
It's a 3-year
I-
investment that unfortunately gets torn up at the end.
It is a big investment. It's a lot of money. I do worry about if we don't have extra parking on there, that we're causing problems with walking across that street there from the church parking lot as well, that there could be lots of accidents from kids darting across the street trying to get to class right away. I do worry about that we're only offering the seniors a chance to park. I do know there's other kids that need to have a vehicle on site for jobs, even as sophomores and juniors. I know we would still probably have to limit it, even at putting in this temporary parking. I just don't see a way around it. I think it's part of the whole package of doing this project. I think we have to go for it. Jennifer?
Even though I made the motion, I'm very conflicted as well. I agree that it's a lot of money for something that's not going to stay. But I can sympathize with the administration. And my main reason for leaning towards it is I want our students and families to be able to experience events, all the sports, everything that they want to come, things that our school wants to host. And that's going to be really hard to do if we don't have on-campus parking after hours. So that's my main reason that I am leaning towards it. I do think in this whole discussion for me has come up a bigger question of, I noticed this week with the school fees, and I don't know why I hadn't noticed it sooner, is that we only charge $5 for a parking pass. And so that doesn't discourage, I shouldn't say discourage, that doesn't encourage students to find other ways to get to school. They might live really close and still want to just drive to school when they could ride their bike. So I think in the future I'd like to talk about some things like that as well, but I think that's too late for this school year. I do agree, I have 3 kids at Timpview this year, and I haven't heard a whole lot from Timpview. Obviously I know that they need to ride bikes and things, but I think we do need to help the school and the student government and PTA continue their efforts to get the word out, no matter whether, even if we build this lot, we're still going to need to make riding the bus cool for those who can ride the bus, and those who live too close, help them carpool and find other ways to get to school. So, but I think I am leaning towards it just for the events and things as well.
Go ahead, Gina.
I'm in agreement. Conflicted. I see some good reasons to put it in. I think that those are valid reasons. I do struggle with the $650,000 price tag for that, because we have so many needs that we see that come before us, and we have to say no to some things that I think are so valid. Not that this one isn't valid. So I struggle with that. A question would be, and my guess is this won't help, but like investing in bus passes for some of the kids, my guess is that is not the problem. Is that right? Like, if instead of using $650,000 for that, we could get them a city bus pass? Is that not the problem?
I don't even think the city bus goes up near Timpview.
Oh, okay.
So I think the closest one is the Temple.
Okay, so it's not even, it won't even help.
It's not really an option.
Okay.
Or maybe down by the creamery.
And those kids get the school bus.
So they would have to walk further than if they had driven. Okay, not gonna help, not helpful. But softball is also a concern for me. And so I am conflicted as well.
Okay, is there further discussion on this?
Um, I, I definitely can't vote yes on this. Just for softball, I was on the first girls soccer team at Timpview, and softball was approved that very same year. And that was in the late 80s, and softball's never had a field at Timpview, ever. And to delay that is just insulting to previous softball players who put forth all that hard work just to get where they are. I can't
Now,
approve this.
You've mentioned that they haven't talked to the softball team. But when I talked to Fidel, I thought he said that they had talked
The
to them.
administration may have, I have not directly.
Okay.
I just spoke to the administration team.
Okay.
One thing to keep in mind too, we've tried a lot of creative approaches to this. I even reached out to the city recently to ask if we could do something with the scooters you see around the city, to see if we could participate in some way to get more of those around the Timpview neighborhoods. Our problem with that was liability. And they've got a rule with the company they have a contract with that no one under 18 can operate those. And so that was our challenge, even looking into that.
Are we going to let, I've talked to a lot of parents and they're planning on getting their kids scooters like that. Are we going to allow kids to bring those into class? I mean, that's kind of a,
They can use bike parking.
like for those out, I don't know, like
Those
they're
like
thinking
electric,
the one
are we
wheels
talking
and
electric scooters?
the electric
or like
scooters.
a Vespa?
The electric scooters and the Vespas, but
Okay, I'm going to throw out another idea. $650,000 could buy us 2 or 3 more buses, plus pay for extra bus drivers. Could we waive the 1.5? Is it 2 mile or is it 1.5 mile?
It's 2 for high school.
It's a 2 mile for secondary.
Yeah.
Could we waive that and have more bus routes to come in?
So we would absorb that cost as a district?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another option is to
and that's
have,
a permanent asset.
and that's an asset that then they could use again in 2 years.
And if we buy used ones, we could sell them and not be out too much.
Or take advantage of them in the future, because
Yeah, and we could just
Transportation
run
is
them
always
up
a
and down Timpview. We could have one that just goes up and down Timpview Drive and picks kids up because, you know, that's going to be the artery where they park.
right, or even some kind of shuttle system between the
Yeah.
church parking lot, because that's a block and a half or 2 away, right?
Yeah, I mean, the church parking lot isn't too bad.
The church parking lot's just around the corner. It's going to be long regardless, where even if you were to park in this so-called temporary parking lot, it's still going to be a long walk regardless. Not as long, but Derek, can you see any reason why we couldn't, can we not waive that 2 mile thing?
So you could waive it.
We can call it a hazard.
You have to hold yours down permanently.
We don't like you talking, so.
As needed, that's not very often. But no, we could waive it, absolutely we could waive it, and just say, look, it's for just this Timpview for X number of years, and that we are gonna bulk up and beef up our routes in that area to provide as much busing. We are currently down drivers right now, and we're looking at options. We're down 6 drivers right now, and we have 0 people that have applied or in the queue. So we're looking at options. I think the tough part with that is we just don't have enough drivers currently for our existing routes. So we're looking at options to possibly, you know, dual purpose and say, look, we're going to have bus drivers, but we're going to offer them a full contract, and then in between their routes, they're going to be like a custodial or a groundskeeper or something like that. So that way, there's an incentive to be there, and we think that can fill that gap that we've got. But we're literally in the infancy phase of exploring that to see if that will get the people and the needs that we have to fill the routes or the empty positions that we have. So it's an option. I think it's a viable option. It's more of, will we be able to pick up the drivers to do it?
Yeah, the only other option, the only thing I see with that problem is that it helps during the school day, but what about events in the evening?
That's what I was going to say is,
So,
Events are fewer and far between, though, right?
not at the high school. I mean, I don't live far from there, and Nate lives very close.
It's every
It's
day
every
almost.
night almost. There's something going on between a band concert, between track and field, between football. I mean,
Even with the parking we have now, it goes up quail,
Yeah.
the parking for a lot of events, basketball games, football games. We lease it. We're gonna lose out a lot of money with our leasing or maybe they're gonna walk too, because every Saturday, that parking lot is slammed. I don't know how much we make from that, but people use that school all the time.
I like the bus idea, and even if we can't start it for a month or two when we hire people, this might be good for when the winter months come up and the kids want to start driving their cars instead of walking.
A problem with the bus is that's 160 kids, and parking lot for 250 is going to be about 500 kids that would be serviced, right? I mean, if you average one or two or three, depends.
But we would have 3 buses, right?
Yeah, 3 buses, so that's 180, right? Or 3 buses, they're each 40 or 50, how many?
How many kids sit on a bus?
Almost 60.
60, so 180.
Okay. Just a logistical question, and I don't know if you have the answer off the top of your head, but Derek, how long does it take to acquire a bus?
That's a good question. Typically, what happens when you acquire a bus is you give them the orders in the spring, and they will have the buses ready for you in the fall. Now, I don't know how quick their turnaround time is, because just that's the standard purchasing model. I've never called up and said, how fast or soon can you get us a bus, and to find out what that turnaround time is. So I can definitely look into it to find out what their quickest lead time is that would be a bus that's kind of like a standard fleet bus that we have. It's not that it would be way different than we normally service. So I can look into that and get back to you on that.
Mark, when would you need to start this project?
As I mentioned earlier, if we started immediately, it would be done mid-October at best, if everything went perfectly.
Well,
And if McKay was here, we'd probably start tomorrow, right? If my counting's right.
Yep.
I don't know now.
and if we're going to spend this money, I would rather do it sooner than later if we're going to utilize it. So I think we still need to make this decision probably tonight.
Mark, I've got a question. Sorry, can I?
Yeah.
I know there's costs like this all over this construction project. Costs that go in that we never get anything back out of. I'm sure there's tons of that already. Can you give me an idea of out of what we're going to spend in total, what percentage is what we would deem like throwaway costs? They're unavoidable in a construction project, right? Especially when you're remodeling, all these wooden enclosures that the kids are walking through, that stuff is going to get torn down and thrown away. So I know we're already doing that. Yeah. So is this actually a small amount compared to what we're already kind of throwing away, so to speak?
No, most of the throwaway costs are pieces, right? And maybe over time, over the 3 years, they might total this or exceed it because we're making so many adjustments. I hesitate to share an amount because I'm just not quite sure what that percentage would be on this one.
Okay.
But it exists in one chunk like this. I can't think of anything that would come close to this one.
Okay.
Could we have the students who want to park there come help with the labor?
Sure. We'd be okay with workers' compensation, right?
Just kidding.
Eric?
That would be nice.
Yeah. Great Eagle project.
I mean, if we're going to put this into perspective, we were going to spend $8 million on portables on a portable city for Timpview at one point,
If not more.
if not more. Yeah. I mean, we have been prepared to throw away money in the past due to necessity.
That's a great point.
I think there's also there's a price tag we can't really put on with keeping the community somewhat happy too. To help us keep this project going, I think that there's a price tag that we can't put a price on that. So I think this would help alleviate that. Yes, you do.
I would say there's got to be some limit.
There is, but there is a limit, but at this point, we're kind of in a bind.
I think they're going to be a 9 mad, and if we do this, there'll be an 8 mad. And
We might only get a
maybe
few
the
emails.
people, yeah.
I also see this as a safety thing too. The more we can have between this lot and the church lot instead of parking blocks and blocks away. You know, I too am frustrated that it's going to delay the softball field another year, but weighing that against the safety for a larger student body, and the softball does have a field right now. I mean, it's not the ideal, but it's a nice field. I think that the safety is important.
Todd, do you know where we are, where Fidel is in terms of hiring additional campus monitors to help out with the supervision around the campus?
I know that he's planning on it and has been working towards that. I haven't heard of an exact number as of yet, but he's intending to have campus monitors at the LDS Church parking lot as well as around the campus to help enforce and support our parking efforts.
They could also potentially help kids cross roads and those kinds of things in bad weather.
Yeah, he did tell me that you know, what they're absent is about 340 stalls, even with the church parking lot. And so that's, if you think about Quail and Timpview Drive, that's about 340 cars that will be parked up and along those streets.
Thank you.
We've also looked at all kinds of various options with phasing, and unfortunately, we can't figure out a way to get that creative. I mentioned to you the other day that Skyline High School is just starting a 6-year phase project. Bingham High School just finished a 6-year phase project. That's the way you avoid this, is by extending the project, but then you pay a whole lot more than $650,000 by doing that 6-year thing, and then you've got so many more classes disrupted and faculty disrupted for twice as long. And with our agreement with State Risk to expedite this, we couldn't extend the schedule.
All right, is there further discussion on this motion? All right, I think we're ready to take a vote for this motion. So all those in favor, please indicate with aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
All right, the motion passes with a vote of 4-2. All right, moving on. Special education policy. Siraj, would you give us a quick brief summary on this?
Good evening. Yes, be happy to. So what's happened is the state in August 2020 revised their special ed rules, and they gave us a year or so to align our rules, our local policies to those rules. So what we've done is we've just mirrored the state rules in our policy. That makes it so that when we're monitored and we do the work that we do, we're all on the same page. And on the overview document that I gave you, you have just some of the changes. These changes really, as I spoke to the state, these are changes that they made to their state rules to align better to the federal rules. So what we're really doing is just trying to align all the way down from this federal government down to our local district. Questions that you have for me?
Well, let's make a motion and then we'll see if we have questions. So.
Sorry, yes.
That's fine. So is there a motion?
I move that we approve the updated special education policies and procedures manual.
Motion made by Board Member Bryson. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Board Member Hales. Is there any further discussion on this or questions? All right, seeing
Oh,
none.
I just had one question.
Go ahead.
I think I know the answer looking at this, but just to clarify, does this change anything from what our special ed department has been doing?
That's a great question, Jennifer. And actually, as soon as the state rules were adopted, we aligned to those state rules, even though our local policy did not have to be updated right away. So we've been following the state rules, which our current policy now will reflect all along.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions or? All right, all those in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. All right. Next, we're going to discuss the large purchase request. Do I be Chad or Derek? All right, Derek, do you want to talk about that?
All right, so what you got before the board is a large purchase request, which is anything above $50,000. This is for a new firewall for our district. We've currently ran into some issues with our existing firewall, and before waiting for UEN to figure out their contract with their state, they normally do. We're being proactive to try and find to find a replacement for our firewall, so that way students are not able to bypass those securities.
Okay, is there a motion on this?
I move that we approve the large purchase request of $140,000 for a web filter upgrade.
Motion made by Board Member Hales. Is there a second?
Second.
Board Member Nielsen, seconds. Is there any further discussion on this? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. All right, I'm going to invite Anne Marie Harrison to talk about the early education plan.
Thank you. I'm coming to you asking for your approval for this Utah Early Literacy Plan, Early Learning Plan. This is a district required plan, rather a state required plan that the district board approves. This shows our efforts and plans for teaching, assessing, and helping students meet essentially our third grade reading goal.
All right, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the UELP 21-22 Early Learning Plan as presented in the study session.
Motion made by Board Member Partridge. Is there a second?
Second.
Second made by Board Member Nielsen. Is there any further discussion on this motion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor indicate with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. All right, Derek, will you?
Derek has his hand up.
Can we redo that last motion on the large purchase? I did not know this, but apparently the recommended action piece down there has a different dollar amount. The dollar amount is above in a different area, and it's $178,500.
That's right. Did say something different.
Oh, I don't see that. So
It's in the document.
it's in the document. Okay.
So it's.
And that's over the 3-year cost. So I'd like to have that motion amended to reflect that.
175.8.
And that's essentially what we were paying for the other program. If I remember right, that's essentially what we were paying for the other program. So it's like the wash.
We're just changing vendors. So, all right. So let's go back to the large purchase request. Is there a new motion?
I move that we approve the large purchase request of $178,500 for a web filter upgrade.
175.8.
I move that we approve the large purchase request of $175,800 for a web filter upgrade.
All right. Motion made by Board Member Hales. Is there a second?
Second.
Board Member Nielsen seconds. Any further discussion on that? All right. Seeing none, all those in favor indicate with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, back to you, Derek, about the fee schedule change.
All right, what you also have before the board is a request to change the fee schedule. And normally this is done in the springtime, and once that's set, but there's been a change in personnel at that high school, and the advertisement that was happening to all the individuals, the parents, was that it would only be the $1,700. There wouldn't be a bifurcation, a split between the fees. and we've put it out for comment. As of today, that I haven't heard any comment back. I'll provide any update or feedback before the next board meeting if there is any other feedback. But we're requesting, and the school's requesting, that we eliminate that junior varsity piece, and it is only just the same flat amount for for the cheerleading, for the $1,700 for all participants, varsity through JV.
All right, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the fee schedule change. That's it.
Okay. Motion made by Board Member Bryson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Nielsen. Is there any further discussion on this? All right, seeing none, all those in favor indicate with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. All right, next we need to approve the consent calendar. Is there a motion for that?
I move that we approve the items on the consent calendar.
Motion made by Board Member Partridge. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Hales. Is there any further discussion on the consent calendar? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate with aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Next, we're going to turn the time over to Nate Bryson, his board member report.
Okay, this board report was a terrible idea, and oh
no.
So I got an email. I've been getting so many emails about this, and I don't really know anything about CRT, I got to say. And so I've looked into it, and I've gone back and forth. And I got this one email, and she's like, why are you a big supporter of CRT? And so I wrote this thing, and then Bonnie had sent me this thing that said, hey, you got to do a board report. And I was like, well, okay, I'm going to do that thing where I go, well, my report today is I got nothing to report. And I was really excited to do that again. And then I was feeling industrious last night, and so I'm just going to turn that email into a PowerPoint, and I'll do that. And then in the morning, that was a terrible idea that I made at like 11 o'clock. And then I went on a bike ride. I try to do board reports. I feel like when you join the board, you're in between the community and the schools. And so we've been getting so much interest in this. I thought I would just send it, and I'm probably going to offend everyone and make everyone mad. And I just want there to be a disclaimer that none of this should reflect on this board, on the school district, on anyone other than me, and even on me it should only reflect a little because it was the musings of a late night last night. So we're going to start. And to do this, let's first do our definitions. What is critical race theory? And basically it says, hey, we're all people, our genetics are the same, and so if we see differences in outcomes in society, it's probably because the systems that we've set up, the laws that have been set up, are biased in one way or the other. And I'm a lawyer, and so it kind of goes back, I'm not going to go on, but it goes back to law. It was developed in law schools, and they use it to analyze laws. When the 14th Amendment came out, they used this test in the Supreme Court called disparate impact, and they look at how things impact different groups, and that's how they determine whether it's in violation of the 14th Amendment. So I thought it'd be kind of fun for us to do a little bit of CRT. I know we tell everyone that we don't do it, but let's do a little bit that the American Bar Association has put out. They did this thing because they're big fans, and so they ask questions about schools. So I thought we would ask these questions of ourselves. And the first question is, do our school rules disproportionately impact students of color and compromise their education? So we kind of have to analyze different rules. It's saying, hey, does this hurt some people or other? I don't know if any of you guys remember this. Some of you are older. This is Kevin Federline. He married Britney Spears. And if he was in our school district, we could say, listen, I hate Kevin Federline's hair. We're going to make a rule against that kind of hair. But, that was Kevin Federline, but it might impact students of color a lot more than just a rule against Kevin Federline, and so that rule would be in violation. And this is kind of one of the core tenets. You have to look at the impact of something instead of the thought that it was done. So even though we didn't our purpose was to get at Kevin Federline, the impact was a little bit broader. Do poorer, more diverse, and these questions are all from the American Bar Association. Do poorer, more diverse schools receive less funding in our district? I did this 2 years ago, and I'm just doing it since our biggest cost is teachers. I thought student-teacher ratio is probably a good substitute for costs. And if you look at our costs, we get a good grade in this area. The schools that are a little bit more diverse, they get more funding. So we are not there. Do we have racially segregated education in Provo? I would say generally no, not in our schools. Our high schools are pretty integrated. But, if we're being honest here, you look at the AP programs, you look at some of our more advanced programs, and maybe there's some deficiencies. My school's Timpview, and there's some shortcomings, and I know that the administration there is trying to develop systems to encourage all of our students to take advantage of our AP programs, which, that seems like a good step. Do we have narrow assessments that deliver results that confirm narratives about the I can't say that word, of children of color? I don't know. I'm not involved in a lot of the things. I do know that we recently changed how to get into our CAS program. We thought that it was maybe a little bit skewed towards students that did well with teachers, and we made it more inclusive. So that's an area where we made progress. Okay, this one is a tough one, and this is where I think most of the fights come from. Do we have a curriculum that excludes the history and lived experiences of Americans of color and imposes a dominant white narrative of history? And I think this is the thing that people are going to fight about, and they've always fight about. There's always been arguments about curriculums, and I don't have an answer to this. I'm not smart enough, and I don't want to read a textbook because they seem really boring. I read them when I was a kid. But I would hope that our parents would read their textbooks and have good inputs on both sides of the equation, because those type of conversations are how you get really good textbooks and that are a little bit more interesting. So I think I just said all that. We probably shouldn't talk about Arthur, because that might not be helpful, but anyways. As you can see, all of those questions, those are the big CRT questions for education that the American Bar Association asks. And we have been asking those probably long before CRT was a thing. Basically, I've read that CRT is basically legal realism that's been repackaged. And so there are a lot of things in academia that people make up fancy word names for, and they use those things because then they do it for their doctoral thesis or whatever. And this one, for whatever reason, has become just a big political hot potato. And so things that we would do just to make sure it was good for our kids, now people might get a little bit upset with us for. So let's go into the areas where people are a little bit more upset. This is the bad CRT that everyone hears about. And there are definitely some things as you looked into this. There's some proponents of CRT. They seem to be, they're things that are anti-white, some things that are Marxist, and some things that are against some of our values. And I think those are discussions worth having. And if parents see those things, they should definitely bring them up. I haven't heard a lot of those things in the comments from the community. It's mainly, we don't like CRT. But those are things that parents should be aware of. And here's the next question. Lots of politicians are doing stuff to combat CRT. Why aren't you guys doing anything? And I thought about this, so I looked at some of the laws. So Idaho, House Bill number 377, this was the first thing that was passed. Basically, if you read the law, it says don't be racist. Oklahoma, Bill 1775. Basically, if you read this thing, it says don't be racist. Our district, we have policy 3214, and this thing states that we do not discriminate on the basis of race, color, religion, age, national origin, sexual orientation, gender expression or identity, disability, or any other classification. This prohibition extends to the creation of hostile learning environments. I would argue that our policy 3214, is as robust and as effective as any of these anti-CRT laws that these governors have put into place. If a parent sees something and it's making their kids uncomfortable, it's singling some child out because of their race, they can bring it up. There's a policy in place where they can go against it. But again, that's something that I haven't seen from anyone in the community that has been bringing this up. But I want people to know that it is available. Let's see. What happens if some teacher slips some CRT into their teaching? And, you know, first of all, and I'm probably going to get in a little bit of trouble for this. First of all, I want to say our teachers are very professional, and they're great, and they follow the standards, and they know the rules, and they probably won't, this probably won't be an issue. Second, I just want to bring this point up, and Terry stopped me, but I was just at the Timpview orientation, and most of those students are kind of white. I would, normally the racism the white people aren't racist against white people. I would be a little bit more worried about it the other way. So just starting, I don't know that it's going to be a big problem. But let's skip that part, because second, kids, you learn all kinds of stuff from teachers, and I could go on and on about some of the things I learned at Timpview that were just nuts. And they're great stories, but kids know. Kids aren't stupid. If a teacher's talking something that's crazy, they're going, this teacher's going off on this again. They're just going to ignore them. The second thing is, teachers aren't that persuasive. I remember when I was in school, I heard so much about the teachers aren't getting paid enough. And I'm sure you guys have all heard that whenever you were students. And here we are, all generation after generation have gone through the educational system, and they've all become voters. And we still don't really want to pay. We're still paying teachers about the same, 20% less than the average college. So they haven't been that effective, but that's beside the point. The next point is, if there actually is an issue, again, we can talk to an administrator, talk to the teacher. Let's have these discussions. These discussions are good. This is how you move things forward. We get these emails, and usually the emails are great, but some of the emails are really kind of mean and super racist. And I've noticed whenever they're really mean and super racist, they include Brian Yazzie, right? I don't know. The last person, it was kind of funny. They said CC Brian Yazzie, but they didn't CC him in the email. They just CC'd it in the text. Well, that's not how emails work. But I really enjoyed that. So those of you who don't know, Brian is our diversity and equity coordinator, and for some people, those two words drive people up the wall. And I'll admit to all of you that I plugged my nose and voted for Trump. So I probably should never tell that to anyone, but I did. I'm a conservative. And so, when I see these words, I get a little bit iffy myself, because the right has, we don't necessarily.
Keep going.
Am I digging myself in a hole, Terry? But since I've been in this district, I understand it a lot more. In a perfect world, we would have individual education for every single one of our students. We would have a person in the district who is assigned to work with a student, and they would be able to give just as much time and effort and whatever to that kid. I feel of education is like a three-legged stool, where one leg is the school, one leg are the parents, and one leg are the students. And we have a lot of situations where some of those legs need a little bit of help. And what I've noticed is we don't have the resources to provide one person for every single, I mean, we have counselors, but they have a lot of people. And so we try to figure out ways to reach out. And some of them are different groups. Just barely, we started having Instagram posts and social media posts also in Spanish. And so we have a huge portion of our population that never received that. But we have Brian, he's looking out for those things. And so now we have someone who's always reminding the administration, hey, don't forget this group. Because from my perspective as a board member, and I'm probably going to get in trouble again, I don't hear a lot from our Hispanic parents. I hear, and it shouldn't matter because every student is an individual, but I don't really know where they stand. So it is nice to have someone who we say, hey, make sure that we're not forgetting them. And that's what Brian is. And so I've grown to really appreciate what he's doing. So let's go through one more problem. And I'm sorry I'm taking up so much of your guys' time. This was first term at Timpview during COVID. And, just look at it, look at these. This is the pass rate. If it's red, you failed 3 classes. If it's orange, you failed 2. If it's yellow, you failed 1. If it's green, you passed all your classes. So, again, Timpview. So we can see when we put it into this graph that there are some issues, right? And some of these issues break down by groups. And so we say, okay, what do we do? Now, why, and we can ask the question. So pretty much we just did CRT because we noticed that there was a discrepancy. And that's what they say, is there a discrepancy in outcome? You need to focus on this problem. And so we say, okay, what are some of the reasons? Because this is much worse than it's been in the past. And things that we've come up with are, and this is things that Brian and some of our counselors, they're looking out for. And they could say, oh, we had a lot of situations where both parents were working. It's hard to study at home when your parents are gone. There's people without access to internet. They didn't know that we provided it as a district. A lot of children in our Hispanic community, they had jobs because they were helping with their family. And so it's hard to go to school when you're working. And maybe some of them, they did a lot of their schoolwork at home, and their community was also hit a lot harder by COVID. And there's also the problem, it could just be the system. I mean, that's what a lot of people who, the people who have disagreements with CRT, they might say, oh, well, the system's just ruined. And so that's the thing we need to look at. And so as an analytical tool, as a lawyer, I'm like, okay, I'm happy for anything that encourages me to ask intelligent questions. That doesn't mean that I'm going to go through and follow all the systems that this group used. But I love questions. I love it when the community comes to me with questions. And so those are all questions that Brian and stuff can help me ask. And, so we need to reach out to all of our parents and see what the problems are. I mean, that's what we have to do. And that's what community outreach is for. And we have to devise solutions that work for everyone. And not just that group of Hispanic children, but everyone. So there's a bunch of solutions to this problem we could go for. We could say, hey, this was really bad for Hispanic students. Let's pass all the Hispanic students. That would solve that problem because they didn't pass their class. Let's just give them a pass. But then someone could say, hey, no, that violates policy 3214. And that policy would be disallowed because that would be in violation because it doesn't treat everyone the same. And so parents would have that authority. So that would be out. We could provide tutors in summer school for all the kids that failed a class. And we did this. This is what we did. And we also have to remember that 384 white kids failed compared to 329. So this was a problem that was everywhere, and we want to help every single student. We're just trying to find ways to reach every single student. And so, maybe that program would help everyone because everyone has to be treated well. And then we have to reach out to them and let all of the families know what we are doing. So I think that is the end. Sorry for doing kind of a long one, but if you have any complaints or, I mean, there's no one here, but you can just email me and maybe we can have an actual discussion. So thanks.
That's Nate B. at provo.edu. So. All right, next we're going to approve student travel and turn the time over to the superintendent.
Okay, I have approved two, well, they're to St. George, so they're in-state travel trips. They're overnight. One in June, so this is since we last had a business meeting the beginning of June. I approved one for late June, and then one is happening here in about 3 weeks. One is boys varsity basketball to St. George, that was the June one, and then the other one is girls tennis to go to a tournament in St. George here in about 2.5, 3 weeks, and that is also in St. George. I've approved those as I'm supposed to do. And then I also wanted to say just a thank you. I wanted to say thank you to Lindsay Backus and Melanie Hall for their participation in the online kickoff. We, as you heard earlier, we have challenges with parking with some of our larger venues, especially the ones that are at Timpview. And so we did not have a live and in-person kickoff session this year. We broadcast it again. I can foresee that happening for maybe the next few years as well. And I appreciate their participation. And also, I want to give a hats off to our custodians, our maintenance workers, our child and nutrition workers, our summer school teachers, our summer school principals, and all those who took part in all kinds of big major events over the summer. I should include technology in that as well. For all the Chromebooks that came back in, had to be cleaned. Some of them had to be not just cleaned in terms of disinfectant, but cleaned in terms of removing things from the computer themselves. And so it was a remarkably busy summer. And it was a little bit different summer from last year, and we're hoping that this year is a lot more calm than the one last year. And we'll just watch that all go by. I appreciate the words and the work of this board, and we did have, I also wanted to mention, we did have 3 meetings about Dixon. We probably had an average of 45 people per event on that. Where should Dixon be rebuilt? The pros and cons of the 2 sites under consideration. So there have been some things that have gone on this summer, and I guess I can publicly declare I think we're ready for school to begin here a week from tomorrow. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. We've come to the end of our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn? So moved. We are adjourned. Thank you for coming.